Welcome to Crisis in Perception, where we examine the systems shaping our world one book at a time. So in this explainer, we're going to dig into how media systems shape our perception of race. And what's really crucial here is that this isn't about some, explicit order or a grand conspiracy. It's about something way more subtle and honestly, way more powerful. The simple logic of repetition and the mechanics of framing. For this, we're diving into the work of Robert M. Entman. His research is all about how news, TV, movies, even advertising, construct what race means in our society. And they do it through these really consistent, patterned ways of showing things.
Okay, so let's get into the core idea here. Entman says the media isn't just a mirror, right? It's not passively reflecting society. It's much more like a camera lens. Now, a lens doesn't just invent things out of thin air, but it absolutely chooses what to focus on, what to magnify, and what gets left kind of blurry in the background. So think about it. What happens when that lens is constantly, again and again, pointed at crime stories that feature certain racial imagery? Well, our brains start to build a powerful connection there. Not because someone ordered it, but simply because that's where the camera was aimed.
And that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? If it's not some big intentional plan, then why does the lens always seem to point in the same direction? This is where we shift from just looking at what we see to really understanding how it gets there in the first place, the hidden logic of the whole system.
And the answer really isn't about ideology or politics. It's about something much more fundamental: incentives. The whole system is just driven by these deep-seated commercial and production needs that automatically, almost without thinking, favor certain kinds of stories over others.
You can see the system's preferences laid out pretty clearly here. News organizations are built for speed and engagement. They need stories that are happening right now, stories that spark a strong emotion, and stories that have great visuals. Well, a story about a street crime? That checks all the boxes. It's immediate, it's emotional, and it's easy to film. But what about a story on the complex structural reasons behind inequality? Well, that's abstract, it's nuanced, and it doesn't really have a simple visual, so it gets ignored. And when you see one type of story over and over and over again, well, our brains start to build these little mental shortcuts.
And what happens is, this same core logic creates these really consistent patterns, and not just in the news, but across the entire media world. So let's just take a quick tour of what that output looks like. First up in the news, just like we've been saying, that relentless focus on violent crime can end up reinforcing old stereotypes just by overrepresenting certain groups as the ones responsible. Then you flip over to primetime TV. A lot of Entman's research shows that the world you see there is often, well, it's demographically skewed. It can give you a distorted picture of who's actually participating in society and what roles they play.
And advertising? An ad has to grab you in, 3 seconds? So to appeal to a target market really fast, they often fall back on using familiar racial representations as a kind of visual shorthand.
And finally, of course, the movies. From the biggest Hollywood blockbusters to small indie films, they are a huge piece of this puzzle, powerfully shaping our collective imagination and our ideas about race.
Okay, so here's the really crucial part. All these patterns, they don't just stay on the screen. They actually feed back into the real world. They influence attitudes, they influence policies, and they can end up reinforcing the very conditions that the media was reporting on. It's a loop.
And you can see that cycle right here. It works just like this. First, you have the patterned media stories we just talked about. Second, those stories shape public opinion on things like crime and race. Third, that public opinion influences public policy, things like policing strategies or new laws. Fourth, those policies create real-world outcomes. And then fifth, those outcomes generate new events and statistics that become the raw material for even more media content. You see? The system literally feeds itself.
But here's the real problem. We almost never see this entire loop all at once. We just see the individual pieces, one news report here, one movie there, and this fragmentation of the bigger structure, well, it creates a fundamental problem for how we see the world.
This is what Entman calls the crisis in perception, and it's such a great phrase. It's not that we're being actively lied to, it's more like we're being handed thousands of puzzle pieces, but we never get to see the picture on the box. We see all the content, all the images, but we don't see the system of commercial and production incentives that are engineering the whole thing from behind the scenes.
So ultimately, when you understand this analysis, it helps you make a critical shift. You move from seeing the media as just this neutral messenger, simply delivering information, and you start to see it for what it really is, an active architect, building our perception of the world through patterned, incentive-driven construction. This project is free and publicly accessible. If you'd like to support the time, tools, and research behind crisis and perception, you can become a supporter on Patreon. For a longer audio-based analysis of this topic, see the deep dive linked in the description. If you enjoy this kind of systems-level analysis, please like, subscribe, and comment with books or topics you'd like us to explore next.